Ukraine?
No, not my fault. No, we'd like to get the peace. It should have happened a long time ago. The Ukraine war with Russia should have never happened. If I were president, it never would have happened. We're trying to get it ended. One way or the other, we have to get it ended. So well, then he can continue. Then he can continue to fight his little heart out.
That's President Trump discussing his 28-point peace plan for Ukraine this Saturday. Today, he's much more optimistic after the U.S. and the EU's highly productive talks in Geneva, where the U.S. said that revisions and clarifications were made. Secretary of State Marco Rubio posted on X the peace proposal was authored by the United States. It is offered as a strong framework for ongoing negotiations. It is based on input from the Russian side, but it is also based on previous and ongoing input from Ukraine, writes the Secretary of State. European leaders worried the plan was too favorable to Russia before discussing it with the United States. Ukrainian President Zelensky has raised concerns over the Kremlin's demand for more territory. Secretary of State Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and top military officials have been working in Geneva to get these negotiations back on track. Joining me now is former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor, CPAC board member, KT McFarland. KT, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for weighing in. I want to get your take on these negotiations, whether or not you believe we are, in fact, in the early stages of perhaps seeing this war come to an end.
Yeah, absolutely. The irony here is that, as President Trump said, this war never would have happened if he had been president. But now he's the only person who can actually solve the problem. The biggest problem so far, I think, has been getting them both to come to the negotiating table, getting the Russians and Ukraine to come in good faith to a negotiating table. And now that's what you're seeing. There's back and forth. There'll be a little of this, a little of that. But I think at the end of the day, President Trump has figured out both sides are ready to negotiate in good faith. Ukraine is going to have to give up some territory. Ukraine is going to get an American guarantee of sovereignty and security. And the Russians are going to be let back into the world community, into the world economic community.
Well, that would be huge for Russia. I mean, I know that the White House is talking about progress on these talks, but I guess people don't want to see the bully win, right? They don't want to see Russia take even more territory after starting this whole thing.
You know, this is what I find so offensive, is that the Biden administration and the neocons and the Democrat interventionists and even a lot of the European leaders, they kept urging Ukraine, keep fighting, keep fighting. You're going to win this war. You're going to take back all your land. We're going to take back you. It was never going to happen. This was always a war of attrition. And in a war of attrition, the larger country, the richer country, the country with more troops is always the one that wins. So Russia is winning the war, slowly, grindingly winning the war. Ukraine can't win the war, but Ukraine can win the peace. And that's what I think President Trump is doing. Get this deal done. And then the world will rush in to invest and rebuild Ukraine. It's rich as agricultural resources, natural resources. People are well educated. Ukraine, within a few years, Maria, could be a thriving and prosperous country, fully integrated into the world economy.
Well, that would be wonderful. I want to move on to what's going on in the Caribbean, KT. The U.S. expanding its military might in the Caribbean, operating more aircraft carriers near Venezuelan airspace and adding Navy ships near Puerto Rico. The military has been striking cartel drug boats coming from Venezuela as part of its Operation Southern Spear to stop these narco boats from bringing drugs into America. President Trump is hoping to speak with Nicolas Maduro soon, pledging to be heavily involved in development around Venezuela. What is your assessment of this operation?
I think the president's operating at two levels. One is the Venezuelan level, and to stop the drug trade, stop the fentanyl into the United States, find a way to have Maduro have an economic relationship with the United States, stop being, an eager recipient, let's say, of Chinese and communist and cartel activities. And there's a second level, a higher level that the president's operating on, which is, I think he wants to remake the Western Hemisphere. Because, again, the United States has avoided the Western Hemisphere, avoided South America, not paid any attention to him for 20 years. And as a result, the cartels, the communists, and the Chinese have all come in. I think the president is looking beyond that. And how can you make an entire unified Western Hemisphere that trades together, does business together, and keeps out the Chinese and other malign influences?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, there's pushback on the president's efforts because he's doing this without going through Congress. Do you think Congress is quietly trying to clip his wings?
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? The Congress, the Trump derangement syndrome is just, it's terminal. People are never going to recover from it, and they're all over Capitol Hill. You know, if you look at the people who really are complaining, they're saying he has no right to bomb these cartel boats out of the water, the fentanyl drug. These are the same people who cheered him on when he bombed the airfields in Syria that were delivering chemical weapons to the Syrian people and destroying their own people. We're talking about drugs that are killing Americans. They should be applauding President Trump's actions in stopping the fentanyl trade.
Well, I guess the Democrats are still upset about his immigration plans. The Department of Homeland Security announced over 370 arrests in under 5 days during a crackdown on illegal immigration in Charlotte, North Carolina, known as Operation Charlotte's Web. 44 of those arrested have a criminal record. DHS sparring with local officials, maintaining that ICE agents will stay in Charlotte to finish the job. KT, your reaction?
You know, who are they getting? Who is ICE getting? They're getting the worst of the worst. They're getting the gangbangers, the murderers, the rapists, the drug cartel members. They're not getting housewives. They're not going after people who are maybe immigrants and have been in the United States for 50 years and are tax-paying, abiding non-citizens. They're going after the worst and the worst. And what you're seeing in city after city where President Trump is sending in the troops and is cleaning up those cities is even the Democrat mayors of those cities are applauding the action. Why? Because they want safe cities, too.
Yeah. I mean, First Lady Melania Trump is inviting U.S. military spouses to join her for an American Red Cross holiday care packages event. She's trying to bring in other leaders to the White House. She's trying to create some unity here. And the president is using his immigration policy to follow the law, KT. But in terms of the laws of our country and, you know, coming into the country illegally, I guess those people who are against President Trump, the critics, don't really care if, in fact, they're breaking the law.
They don't. And this is this is a dirty secret that the Democrats knew exactly what they were doing with those open borders. They knew that the American people, the American citizens, were not buying what the Democrats were selling. So what would they do? They would bring in tens of millions of new people who would then be dependent on Democrat government handouts and then would faithfully vote for Democrats. Their intention was to have Democrat Party rule, socialist rule in America forever. And so that's why it's so important to clean up the border, close that southern border, and then get rid of the worst of the worst, and then rebuild and regrow the American economy.
Yeah. Well, we just spoke with Howard Lutnick this morning, and he is in Brussels talking to the Europeans. He told me that he's not expecting a big change to the tariff deal. But, of course, President Trump has been using tariffs so effectively on many levels. Howard Lutnick said that we are not expecting any change in terms of the tariffs with Europe right now at 15%. But they're trying to convince the Europeans to actually do away with some of those extra costs like digital fees. And of course, President Trump talked a lot about the digital services tax, KT. Your thoughts on the tariffs and the use of tariffs in the face of these emergencies, whether it's a trade conversation or ending a war? The president has used tariffs on a number of levels quite effectively.
You know, he's understood, because he's a businessman, he's understood that the privilege of selling into the American consumer market is ultimate. And every country in the world needs to have its goods sold in America. As a result of that, he can use tariffs as the supreme foreign policy national security weapon. And he's done it whether he's done it to bring peace agreements between Pakistan and India. He's done it to bring trade agreements between the United States and the Europeans. He's done it to bring peace in the Middle East. Tariffs are a huge and a significant national security leverage and weapon that we have. It doesn't cost us anything. It's not sending in the Marines, but it is having extraordinary results across the board.
Yeah, for sure. KT, great to catch up with you as always. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.
All right, KT McFarland joining us. Have a happy Thanksgiving, KT.